Did you know that the Chernobyl disaster caused over 200,000 square kilometers of contamination across Europe and played a direct role in shifting global nuclear policies? Even decades later, it continues to influence leaders and shape decisions at the highest levels of government. April 26, 1986, a day that changed history. The Chernobyl nuclear disaster wasn't just a catastrophic accident, it was a political earthquake. It shattered trust in governments, exposed the dangers of secrecy, and forced world leaders to rethink their stance on nuclear power. But how did it specifically influence key figures? From Soviet leaders to modern environmental activists, the shadow of Chernobyl continues to shape decision-making to this day. In the immediate aftermath, the Soviet Union scrambled to contain the disaster, both physically and politically. Mikhail Gorbachev, the Soviet leader at the time, was faced with a crisis that threatened not just the safety of millions, but also the credibility of his government. The disaster fueled public fear, mistrust, and global scrutiny, making Chernobyl a pivotal moment in world history. One of the most affected figures was Mikhail Gorbachev himself. Many historians argue that Chernobyl accelerated the collapse of the Soviet Union. It exposed the cracks in Soviet governance, leading Gorbachev to push harder for his glasnost, or openness, and perestroika, or restructuring policies. But it didn't stop there. Outside the Soviet Union, Chernobyl sparked intense debate on nuclear policy. Angela Merkel, Germany's former chancellor and a trained physicist, was deeply influenced by the disaster. Decades later, after the Fukushima accident in 2011, she spearheaded Germany's commitment to shutting down its nuclear plants, a decision rooted in the lessons of Chernobyl. And then there's Greenpeace, and the rise of environmental activism. The disaster gave the movement undeniable proof of the dangers of nuclear energy, fueling campaigns that pressured governments to adopt stricter regulations and explore renewable alternatives. But perhaps the most dramatic shift came from inside the Soviet Union itself. Valery Legasov, a leading Soviet scientist, played a crucial role in the Chernobyl response. He was one of the first to acknowledge the true scale of the disaster, but his warnings were suppressed by Soviet authorities. After years of frustration, he took his own life, leaving behind tapes that exposed government negligence. These recordings sent shockwaves through the Soviet scientific and political communities. Chernobyl was more than a nuclear disaster, it was a turning point. It shaped leaders, changed policies, and left a permanent mark on global governance. Gorbachev's reforms, Merkel's nuclear policies, the rise of environmental activism, these are just some of the many ripple effects of that fateful night in 1986. Even today, the lessons of Chernobyl continue to influence decisions on energy, transparency, and disaster preparedness. What do you think? Has Chernobyl changed the way leaders handle crises today? Let us know in the comments. And if you're interested in more history-changing disasters, check out our video on Fukushima or 3 Mile Island. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon for more deep dives into history.